confirmation of the agenda for the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accept the agenda for February 20th, 2019 budget meeting as presented. Do I have a mover? Nita, and seconded by Chris. All in favor? Pass. Disclosure of pecuniary interests. Seeing none, we'll move on. Donna, I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Reeve. So we have good news this evening. The biggest excitement in our budget at this time is a letter that you received in your council package last evening saying that the OMPF funding will remain the same. So that was tremendous news, and that certainly puts us into a position that as soon as council is comfortable, we can now have a budget that we're close to passing or whatever changes we still need to make, but we don't have to wait now till the end of March as we were once told that until that decision is made. So at last meeting, we talked about where we would like to end up in this budget. And as we said that I asked council to consider a budget of somewhere around 10%, because as we know, the impact of the Wingham Police alone is 6% of those spending dollars. So we weren't going to get down anywhere much below that anyway. So at this point, that's where we're at. We're at 9.54. And so that means in dollars, a spending increase in dollars of $527,181 more than last year. So since our last meeting, we've had some increases in the budget and some decreases in the budget, but the net effect of that is that the budget has been reduced overall by the $561,523 since last time. So now my budget, you guys are in eScribe, so your numbering system in your budget is different than mine. But at the back of your budget package, there was a comparison that showed you the change between the January 15th and 16th meeting and the February 20th meeting. So the title of it it was way at the back, and as I said, you'll just see. So I don't have page numbers on mine, but I'm wondering if one of the other staff that have page numbers in eScribe would be able to.
What are we looking for, Donna? What's the title?
It's just it's a Schedule A, and at the top it'll have January 15th and 16th in one column. Trevor, do you have it up there?
Mine's still loading.
Still loading?
Been loading for a couple minutes.
Do you have a hard copy? That's last time, so
yeah.
Bernie, you'll want the new one though, so you'll have to use that one. Yeah, your last version won't work.
Schedule A you're looking for?
Yeah, it has Schedule A.
Page like 61.
This. Okay, 61 in there, perfect, thank you. So at the top then, I'm just gonna double check, Trevor, make sure you're the page you're looking for. Perfect, thank you. So on that summary sheet, and again, I apologize for the page numbers, what I've done there is just quickly run a quick summary so you can see department by department where there were some changes. And as I said, those changes have added up to an overall decrease of $561,523.95. So what I did in order to do that is, as I said, we had talked at the last meeting, and Trevor, if you wouldn't mind, can you flip back and give them the capital page? It would just be a couple of pages previously, or Kevin, do you have it with all the orange marks on it?
Page 58.
Page 58. So if you, I think what I'll do is call mine up here as well. It'll be easier for me to follow as well. Just gonna get on the same spot as you are. So I went back to the staff, and we talked about what could we do to bring this budget down to where council would find it acceptable. So one of the things we talked about was that, and really the two choices are reserves and capital. So we talked about reserves, and amongst the staff, we decided to leave the reserves basically the same as they were. So the sheet that you had last time showing that we were putting 1,271,000 into reserves, we're still actually we're putting an extra $1,500 into reserves, so we're still putting 1,272,000 into reserves. But where we ended up cutting was in capital. So as we talked about various times, we have such a busy year ahead of us this year. I'm not sure why this screen won't come up on there. Try closing that one down. All right, there we go. So let me come to capital again. Okay, here we are. And you can follow along on your screen. That makes it easier for you. So when we discussed this matter with the staff, the main thing that we talked about was that there's no point in putting projects in the budget if they're not going to get done anyway. And we know already that we have such a busy year lined up ahead of us, and that the fire hall and public works station is going to take a tremendous amount of time, already has taken a tremendous amount of time. And so that is one of our largest priorities this year, and we have to remain focused on getting that done. So we revised the numbers in your last package. We've updated the numbers to what we feel that we'll have as the ultimate price for the tender. But again, until we actually go out to tender, we don't know what that number will be. What that leaves us with is, at this point, it would look like internal borrowing of about $291,000. Now, if the tender comes in good, then we may not end up borrowing anything. It all depends on those tender prices for sure. So and then we'll make arrangements once we know that what those tender prices are, then we can talk about how we would finance the balance. So we could simply add it to the taxes for a few years. There's the possibility, we've discussed selling the old fire hall and PUC shop. So there's a number of things. If we did go that route, you could put those proceeds towards the shortfall. There's a number of ways that we could reduce that amount. So one of the other things that we did in the last budget, the rural road surface treatment was going to be fully funded from taxation. And so by the end of the year, we know, and we talked a little bit about it last night, each year we get an OSIF funding formula, and we knew we weren't going to spend it all in 2018. So we transferred some into reserves, plus the amount we already had in reserves. So we were able to take that $101,000 off of taxation and then fund the rural roads surface treatment program for 2019 in the amount of $87,885 fully from that grant funding. So that was a big change there. And again, when we move down into the expense portion, which is on your screen now, then some of the change in the fire hall costs, which we've discussed, and the change in the rural surface treatment program, which we've discussed. Sean amended the price of the mower and trailer to $25,000. And the big block of orange was all those lighting projects. So we took out all those lighting projects, even though they are energy saving projects. We just don't feel that there's enough staff time this year to be able to do them. So there's really not any point in keeping those in the budget. From last budget meeting, there's been a number of discussions between Sean and council and others. And so the whole amount for the walking trail bridge in Blythe has been taken out. So you see that that's at zero now. And one thing that has been added in is for the administration office here, records management program, and it's called Laserfiche. So one of the things we've been trying to do over the last few years is deal with the mountains of paper that we have. So this is a scanning and archival storage system where you helps you get rid of your paper, and it's great for document retrieval and that sort of thing. And so it's in conjunction with the county. The county has this program already, and then we can piggyback with them. So that was an addition. So those were some of the changes there, the main changes in capital. So as you went through your budget, you'll have seen all the orange. Where we talked about was adding the 0.2% in the wages. So that was a big, it affected almost every page because there's wages on almost every page. Some of them only changed by a few $100s. It wasn't significant. So what I'd like to do now is to go to the some of the summary pages so we can kind of see what this all means. So on the tax rate page, and Trevor, would you mind calling out to council what page that is on, please?
That page is on page 59.
So page 59. So on the tax rates, this is where our tax rates have ended up at the very moment that we're dealing with this version 2 of the budget. And what I do is I followed a property that was assessed at $200,000 last year, and this year it's assessed at $202,750. So for now, we don't have the county and school board rates. I believe there's a county budget meeting tomorrow morning. So they'll be dealing with their budget. I'm not sure if you're ready to pass the budget, Bernie, or how close you are at the county. But as soon as we get that information, we would be working it into here. And it would certainly, it could further reduce what we're looking at here. So a property in, whether it's a residential property in Blythe, Wingham, or East Wawanosh, and it's assessed at $202,750. Where we're sitting right now, at the version, this version is a version that I'd like you to look at, and this is with adding some police grants in. So actually, I should backtrack for a second here. I'm going to go to the same page, but in the main version. So a property in Wingham right now at $202,750, where we're sitting right now without the suggestion that I'm going to make, would see an increase of $309.60. And a residential property in Blythe would see $26.26. And a residential property in East Wawanosh would see $31.19. But as we know, everybody's taxes are affected differently by how much your assessment goes up. So if your individual assessment went up by more than that, then you're going to see quite a bit of a different change. So if you look at this page, and this is the sample taxes, Trevor, and it should be right in there as well, page 60. So these are some actual properties in each of the wards. So the first one here, we're looking at the assessment last year was $215,500. This year, the assessment went up 1.28% to $218,250. So this property is going to see $328.92 increase. The next property had very slight increase, less than 1%. And so it's going to see $196.31. The third property had quite a jump in assessment. I'm not sure what caused that assessment jump, but the assessment itself went up 17.76. So this particular property would see $781.19 increase. And a commercial property that was at $825 last year is now at $835, and it would see an increase of $1,451.78. Two Blythe properties that we were looking at. The first one went in assessment, had 3.78% assessment increase. So it would be looking at $93.06. The second property had an assessment increase of 1.94%, and it would go up $62.20. And an East Wawanosh property that we're looking at, the residential portion also had a higher than average increase at 4.36. And that property still, though, would receive an increase of $103.09. And what we know, and I'm sure all the East Wawanosh people know, is that the farmland assessments have, seen dramatic increases over the last couple of years. So this one's going up 10.98%, which results in the farm piece of that property going up $706.64. So these properties should look fairly familiar, and I was just wondering if you have any comments on what you're seeing here for increases. It just lets you get a grasp on how varied the increases are by property based on how much their assessment has went up and the area rating.
Go ahead, Chris.
Through you, Reeve. Donna, the farm properties, like, they're going up ridiculously.
Oh.
And what do we do? Are we gonna sort of deal with the, what's it called? The figure for, the just escaped me.
Like from impact, you mean?
No,
Assessment?
assessment, sorry. Are we gonna be flexible with the assessment on farmland in particular to be, well, kind to farmers out there? Because it's gonna be even worse when they reassess, and it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the farmland value. I've always disagreed with MPAC and how they formulate it. We've had the same issue ourselves, and we're going to have everybody fight or appealing them. That's what's going to happen. But anyways, are we as a municipality ready to make some, deliver some changes or whatever for them?
Unfortunately, the assessment function is removed from the township. Like, we can't legally change any of the assessments. It's all through MPAC. So what we all
Mill rate, sorry, that's what I was thinking of.
right, and so
Yeah.
the tax rate is based on the calculations that we've done here, but how much the properties go up in assessment, we have no control over. And there's really
No, that's where an appeal will happen.
if you can if you have sales data and things like that you can launch an appeal to MPAC, then there's certainly an avenue to do that. But the municipality is responsible to function with the assessment that we're given, and we can't change that.
I understand that. It was just the mill rate. Like, it just gets to a point where it's going to be, the expense is too great for the particular land base, and it just becomes ridiculous. It's there now.
And it's in a similar vein is up around the cottage country, where you find that a lot of these older cottages up around the lake are being assessed, absorbently too, just because all the cottage market values, the sales have generated such big dollars, and so it's a similar vein for sure.
But it's something we're going to have to face because we're going to have these folks down our throats over it.
Right, but I'm sure that they all know that there isn't anything the municipality can do about the
The
assessment.
mill rate
Yeah.
adjustment,
Yeah.
perhaps.
So Donna, if I could just follow up on that, just so I have this understanding properly. We're looking, let's just use the 10.98% on the farmland. Plus they've got the county percentage to go up or down, it could be even. Plus they've got the education, or that's all built into that.
No, so that is their assessment increase, and that assessment would be used by us, the county. The same assessment would be used by the municipality, the lower tier, the education, and the county. We all use that same assessment. So their assessment has gone, so this property was valued last year at $1,700,000. Now MPAC says it's worth $1,886,000.
Trevor, go ahead.
So the one thing that that is always a difficult discussion with not only residential people, but farm individuals as well, is the assessment is out of the control of the municipality. It's impact. The only thing the municipality can do is say to the ratepayer, prepare an appeal and hope you get reassessed. That's as much as we can do from a municipality perspective to guide them in the assessment discussion. The real concern is when you talk about mill rates and changing mill rates or being flexible, you have to be careful, because whatever change you're going to make to one impacts the rest. You just can't reduce the mill rate for farmland and say we're going to give a break to the farm group or commercial or industrial or whatever, because the minute you do that, it triggers an other swing to the other mill rates, like residential, commercial, industrial, whatever. It's not, you just can't. The county has this discussion as well over the amount of time as well. It's called tax ratios, and it's not as simple as just changing the tax rate for one specific assessment part, because that one assessment part impacts a whole bunch of other assessment parts in the whole municipal tax scheme. So it's a conversation that the county's having. At least I recall that they were having it. Because they were also concerned about the high assessments for obviously in Huron County being the majority of agricultural land. So the county's looking at that as well, but they have to be very careful too about adjusting those ratios, because that will swing large changes in commercial, residential, or however they want to change that ratio. So, I sympathize with the agricultural sector and the fact that farmlands are what they are, because arguably you can go out there and find, there's been houses or farms that sold for $3 million, and then there's farms that aren't being sold for $3 million. And the problem is that they're using a lot of those calculations MPAC is to assess what a piece of farmland is, and it may not be comparable. And I think that's where the discussion that we had last Thursday with MPAC, when they said about your My Property app, where you can take into consideration all that information. Ratepayers have a lot more information about their property today than they ever did before. So I always recommend that ratepayers go and find as much information about your property and how it is assessed by MPAC, because they do give that ability now that you can see the information and how it's determined. Before, it used to be one of those things where you just got a number and said, okay, I guess that's the number, and you move on. So I think they've given that a lot of thought now.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, Farrah, but all I know is that as this moves forward, gears forward, MPAC doesn't seem, they're armchair assessors. That's what they are. Because there's not enough farms sold, to be honest, to the one sitting there in the middle type of thing. They grab one from way over there. Oh, it must be. But they don't look at a farm. Every farm's different. Every farm, whether it's drained, how much is tile, or sorry, how much is workable, how much is bush. Like, there's so many variables. They don't even look at that because they can't. They don't have enough staff. And they told me that. So they just do it by satellite. That's not the proper way. So yes, you can appeal and try and argue that point, but it's just their way of doing it is not, it's the best that they can do. I understand that, but it's not good enough. And it's going to become a gravy train for municipalities, especially like our county, where more than half the assessment is farming. I'm worried about it. and I've heard enough from producers in our area, in our ward. They're very concerned about this in the future and how it's going. And so I think it's something we should be thinking about, how we deal with it. Yeah, and if we give a break to one group, what about the others? But there's reasons for it. So I don't know. It's just something we should be prepared, because you're going to have an awful lot of people visiting us because of this, as it keeps going up. Just know it.
But just to add on to that, we have no control over the assessments. This table has no, they can yell at us all they want.
I know, but
And I'm one of the guys with the cottage, so. I'm one of the guys getting really caught right now. So I do understand what you're saying, Chris. And I wouldn't see a problem with this council getting together and say, let's send a letter off to Impact and say, like, give our farmers a break.
OFA's been fighting. The Christian farmers are arguing over it too. Like, Impact's hearing it.
Yeah.
And they need to hear more about it, I suppose.
The problem at the end of the day, and then we're gonna let Don continue on, is that is one of the ones that we have our hands on.
I understand that. It's just, how do we deal with what is handed to us?
Exactly.
Reed Bailey, I just want to ask Don. So Don, does the municipality have the opportunity to change the base municipal rate? That's the conversation I think Chris is talking about.
Well, the base municipal rate is made up of when we do our budget, everything that isn't area rated
Yep.
is under the base municipal rate.
Right.
So how to lower the base municipal rate, which you've done in this version, is to cut things like capital and that, which affect all the wards and not just Wingham area rating. So that's how you cut the base municipal rate.
But not just one. I guess what Chris is asking is how do we adjust and I'm saying with the tax ratios you can't do it, but with the mill rate in essence is the base municipal rate. But it's determined by the entire budget. You can't impact one line of Schedule C that says I want to reduce X whatever by X whatever.
No.
We can't do that because of the reasons why it's in the whole budget. I just want to make sure that's clarity. Because when somebody says we can't change it, I want to make sure the answer is we can't change it. Not we just don't have that. We don't have the ability to change the assessment. But if we have the ability to change something else that might affect farm rate taxes or whatever the case may be, then I would hope that, I would hope we would know that information, or that option, or that opinion. I don't know that. I have never seen, the only time I've ever heard of it is this whole tax ratio discussion at the county. I don't think from at a lower tier we have the ability to do that, but I don't, I'm just wanting to make sure that what we're hearing is we really can't impact anything to reduce the impact to farmland taxation is what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
There's nothing that I'm aware of that we could do on an individual basis to reduce the tax ratio that is paid by the farmland, which is at 25%. So
Just to finish that off for you, Chris. So the one thing we could do is we could not pave a road, fix a bridge. So then you've got your ratepayers coming back going, but you didn't fix the roads. Well, we couldn't afford to because your taxes would have went. See the little crunch we've got ourselves in?
We're in a bind.
Yeah. So this is where if we get a little growth going on, like in Blythe is going on, this is going to help us change that because we're all working together. So that's where we can make the difference. But at the end of the day, what happens is we're doing so little now, and you both said that, and I totally agree, as you know, with East Wellmarsh. But the problem is, the only way you're going to get that to go down is do less. And you guys are almost at the point of you can't do less because there's nothing else to do. Donna, continue on.
Okay, so with this budget that we're looking at, my biggest concern now, of course, is the impact of the Wingham Police on the Wingham ward, because you see that what we were looking at there for both Blythe and East Wawanosh is somewhat manageable, but what we're looking at for Wingham is still fairly significant. So as I said, even though we've gotten down to 9.54, what we need to do is look at something that would have just an impact on Wingham and the area rating.
Can I
So, yeah.
just throw something out there,
Yeah.
Donna, because it's something we were talking about the other day. So if I'm reading this right, you've got Morris Turnberry, Blythe, and Wingham, or whatever. That's the bottom line, is one's going up 3.61. Have I got the right numbers?
No,
Where are they? It's hard for me to see.
so for the
Just-
wards, you
Yeah, just
wanted
the
to.
word tax increase this year, where we stand.
So I have to go over to the tax rate ones. So right now, so they're over there to the far right.
Mhm.
So Wingham, as we stand right now, would go up on a $750,000 assessed house. Wingham would go up 309.60, Blythe 2626, and East Wawanosh House 3119.
So the bottom tax increase that we're looking at right now is 7.49 for Wingham, less than 1% for both of them.
Correct.
So if we were to help Wingham out, if we were to take our reserves, and we took, as low as you can go is 0.77%. And so in all wards take out of reserves, put towards the taxation, you're gonna drop 0.77 to 0. You're gonna drop 0.99 down to about 0.22, and then you can drop down to 6, what would that be? 6. See where I'm going with that? You can't give Wingham any more than you give Blythe or East Wawanosh. I'm just suggesting, I want you guys to think about this. I'm just suggesting if we were to, from the reserves, how much would it cost us from the reserves to drop 0.77 on all 3 wards to help Wingham out this year? You're still gonna have a 6.85% increase in Wingham, and you'd have 0 and 0 in the other ones. And we would not affect the work we're doing, we would just pull it out of reserves.
So there's a couple problems with that, is that, so the reserve, Wingham is area rated, and it's the Wingham ward that we need to deal with specifically. The other 2 wards, to me, those are such minimal increases that I can't really see that those would be, disagreed upon. So I'll give you an option along the same line exactly as what you're talking about, Bernie. So under this version 3 that I looked at is, I looked at Wingham Police and where are the differences, the big differences, of course, from last year to this year. And of course, the disbandment charges are, one of the biggest things. But one of the items I wanted to bring to your attention here is the grant revenue. So in the past, as you can see, Wingham has received $110,000 in grant revenue for 2 grant programs that deal with the Wingham Police. One is the CPP and one is the 1,000 officers. So in the first rounds of the budget, I didn't put any grant money in. But in light of being notified by the province that we received our OMPF money, I was taking a chance that we will still get some grant money from the province, as we always have in the past. So as I said, we've received 110 in the past before. I put in 75 for you to have a look at to see what that impact would bring. We don't know 100% for sure that we would get that grant money. I spoke with the administrators of the grant, and they said that with our transfer from Wingham to OPP, we still qualify. So that was step 1, was to make sure that we still qualify. But of course, they don't really know with the Ford government where all their grants are going. But as I said, it was such good news that we got the OMPF grant that I ran a scenario putting in $75,000 of a grant just for Wingham. So what that does for us is bring our overall down to 8.18. But when you take a look at the impact on the taxes, so if you go over to that same schedule, so Blythe and East Wawanosh, of course, stay exactly the same because it doesn't affect them. But Wingham then would drop down from that property being 309 down to 246. Sorry, Trevor, go ahead.
So, but we haven't done anything as it relates to the assets.
That's right.
So in essence, you know, the vehicles and anything like that that we've sold, or that the police services sold to either the other departments or whatever the case, that would impact Wingham's area rating as well.
Yes.
Because it should be going right to the police budget.
Yes, if council chose to do that, then certainly they could.
But what do you mean council chooses? Those are assets of the police board.
Well, they are assets of the township of North Huron. They don't belong to the police board.
So I think, I'm just gonna interject there. So I'm seeing what you're saying, and it's a very good argument, and I'm sure all 7 of us sitting here realize that those assets that the police board that we're using, the cars, the guns, the whatever, really have been paid for by the Wingham Ward. So what
Right.
Trevor's asking is, even though we as a council have the right to do it, he's asking of us if we could take that money we're getting from it and help the Wingham Ward, because the Wingham Ward really did pay for it.
Sure.
If we could put that money over into it. Could I get an agreement on that?
Yeah.
Well,
Is that okay?
first off, and that's what I was getting at, Trevor.
Oh, sorry.
Is that they don't belong to the police board, but they do belong to the township. And because they were raised paid for by area rating, it makes sense to put the money back into the area rating. But we don't have at this time a total of what that could be to put into the budget. But as I said, unless you have a total.
Well, the chief has a value about what the values are, and that paperwork should be coming tomorrow.
And you know what the value would be?
I can't off the top of my head. I don't know that. The most valuable piece of equipment that there is the vehicle.
That's right.
That's the most permanent. And you're looking at probably I have a
it's
feeling
like
it's something like
10,000.
10 or between 10 and 15,000, I think. But like you've got guns that were like 7,000 or 8,000. Like we're selling them for 5 or something like that. Like they're those assets are going to add up to something, maybe close to maybe half of the 75, but at least it's something.
So we could add that to it.
Well, to me, you know, the fact is that the police services board, those are assets. If the municipality owned those assets, then why is the police services board giving a motion to sell them? That's the argument that I have. If the police services board wasn't responsible for those assets, then what was the wait for us to do the motion to sell them? The municipality could have did that. But what that's the part, like the municipality, we're responsible for the budget, meaning we're responsible to put in the budget to buy assets. Therefore, the board should be responsible for selling them. And that's the part that I think we need to make sure is incorporated in here.
But ultimately, the township owns them.
So in all honesty, yes, because the township funds the taxpayers fund the board.
All the assets, like the vehicles, are not in the name of the Wingham Police Board. Their insurance and everything is covered under the township of North Huron. So, but as you said, it was all area rated and paid by area rating. So it only makes sense that they go back against the Wingham Ward, whatever, to offset the Wingham costs. So even if we estimated that at 25,000 and the difference in grant money, it still makes quite a difference on what the Wingham Ward would pay. So I guess it's a matter of either we hold the budget up until we know those numbers, or we put something in that we can move the budget forward that's reasonable.
Well, sorry, to be quite honest, you're gonna be holding the budget up until the police services board approves the budget. We haven't approved that budget. So the police services board isn't gonna see that budget, the final budget, till March.
March.
unless I have a special meeting, which I'm anticipating having a special meeting,
Mhm.
but it wasn't gonna be held up, or it wasn't gonna be held up only because of that. There's some issues that we have to deal with at the Police Services Board to make sure that the budget makes sense
Right,
from a total continuity and costing perspective, salaries and all that stuff. So we're there. It's just that I want to make sure that we're not moving ahead when the Police Services Board hasn't approved anything yet. We haven't approved the budget.
So I'm gonna jump in here again. So we will not be passing our budget until we have the police board done, because if we do pass a budget and everything goes wrong, where are you gonna get the money from? Because you already passed your budget. So we are going to be held up by. So I'm gonna also throw in there, Trev, can you have that special meeting? Because are we talking 10 guns at $5,000 a piece or 2 guns? It could make quite a difference. So we all understand right now that we will be held up until that's done and it'll be in your hands.
So what I'm telling you, what I'll tell this council, and so just to answer
And
the
then-
question, So I'm having a special meeting next week to determine a couple of issues that have come up between the Police Services Board and the budget today. After that meeting next Tuesday, we should be able to appoint to understand where our budget will land. I'm gonna give myself a week to figure out that budget, and then I'm gonna have another meeting to finalize the budget. So I'm hoping within 2 weeks, I can have a budget that's finalized by the Police Services Board to Donna. All of this will hopefully rectify what's going on in here, and then we at least have solid numbers.
Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Could we pull some reserves? That would be an estimate of perhaps what the articles are worth, the equipment's worth. Then it keeps us going. And when they're sold, then that money could go back into reserves to offset what come out.
well, it should go directly into this budget, is really what you're saying, and that would be the proper way to do it. So I guess really the question is you have 2 issues then. The budget will be held up until we get the final policing numbers, which is fine. But then we have the second part of the issue, is the rest of the budget in a suitable position to be passed? Or do we need to be having more budget meetings, waiting on the police to finish up their budget? That we can be working on. So that's the question to council. Is the police subject aside, are we in a position then to pass this budget with the effects that we're showing on East Wawanosh and Blythe?
I'm just gonna, I know where you're going with that. So you're suggesting that our budget is basically done, but we're not gonna pass it because we're gonna wait on the
Right.
police. I know what Chris is suggesting is we could just take some money out of reserves, put it for what we think the police are gonna be. The only concern I'd have with
No,
that
we
is
can't do that.
you can't do that?
No.
Okay, so that rules it off.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good move. I think if everything works out for the numbers we're looking at, I don't see any reason why we can't pass our budget contingent to waiting on the police. So what she's asking for is, do you want to have another 2 or 3 meetings to discuss everything that's on the budget? Or are you okay with everything on the budget and you guys coming out at 0.99 and 0.77? And that's all done then. We're done with it. All we got to do then is finalize the police when the police come.
That's what I'm asking. Yes, correct.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I'm not confident yet.
Okay, so we need to have a list. You need to tell us what at the next meeting is the items that are in this budget that you would like to see removed. And then we would go back and take those, if council agreed, then we would take those items out and then we could see where the budget ended up.
I think you've done a great job of managing the assets and what we would try to accomplish this year. Are you in each department? Has each department done, other than what Sean's doing because he's already been cut? But that made a lot of sense, because if you can't handle it this year, why even have it in the budget? So that's tremendous. But for the other departments, have they cut
Yeah.
as much as they can?
They've all been through their budgets 2 and 3 times, so, as I said, if there's some particular items that council has concerns about, then we can certainly go back and look at those items. But I don't want to waste time if we're held up because of the police. We can be doing other work to make sure that as soon as they're ready to go, then we're ready to pass this budget. So
Donna,
we'll
can I
just save time.
Donna, can I just ask you, so the way it's
Yeah.
looking right now, we have a less than 1% increase for Goliath and East Wawash.
On a $202,000 house.
So when I was on council last time, I would have recommended that we just simply add 1% or 2% to that to put into reserves, believe it or not. That is a fantastic number, an unbelievable, fantastic number. And we didn't have to argue too much to get there, just based on my experience, Chris. The reason we're not doing anything like that is because of the number beside. And that number is going to come down to the numbers you guys are dealing with too. So remember, you are down less than 1% with the work that's done and the conversations you've had with your staff.
On residential, we still have to deal with farm tax, with the farmland tax. Or not?
There really isn't anything that we can change on that.
I'm not saying you have to change, but this is only on the 200,000 residential.
Right, that's right.
So East Wawash people still have
Oh.
land taxes, that's.
For sure. If you look at the examples that we've given
Yeah.
here on the, there's the farm example right there. So that particular property, the house would go up 103 and the farm portion would go up 706.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
Mhm.
So East Wawash, then we're not looking at less than 1%. Now you're telling me with the farmland added in, we're looking at 4.36.
The example I gave you on the tax rate, because each property is so different
Yep.
and each ward pays a different tax rate. So on the example, to look at it, this example across the board, it's the very same house in all 3 wards. How much would that pay? So that you can see on the same example, what would that be? So that's on that example. So then, as I said, you have to look at all the individual ones because not all properties go up by, this particular residence only went up in assessment by 1.37. So when we look at all our particular examples, they went up all different amounts, some more than 1.37, some less. And so then you see the varying rates of what they would go up.
So just in the paper, it's going to say sooner or later, the taxes in North Huron went up X amount of money. But you're telling me it's all different because of the different size of houses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
I'm good with that. Just a second. I'll let you know a second. So what is that number at right now if we're going to say this, except for the police and the women? What number are we looking at? What number would you tell the public today? Because that's what these guys have to sell. That's where I'm going. What did these guys have to sell?
So at this time, we tell them what the increase in tax spending is. If we're on this version, it's either the 9.54 or this version where I've added 75,000 in on the grants is 8.18. And then you would say on a house assessed at 202,750, it would go up X dollars in Blythe, X dollars in Wingham, and X dollars in East Wawash. It's the only way that you can provide a straight comparison for all 3 wards. In the old days, the assessment stayed the same for 4 years. And if you didn't have any area rating, you could say, oh, we had a 3% and everybody would have had it. That isn't the way it's done anymore. So you have all these variables in and you have to look at each property individually, which is why I tried to give an example of properties from each of the wards so that you could see how that translates into the differences. Trevor, were you gonna add a comment?
sorry, Trevor, I'm sorry.
No, but here's the part that I think this would help both new counselors and the public, is if we had 2018 assessments, if you left the assessments alone, so taxes are going up for two reasons. One, taxes, the tax rates,
The
the
dollars
dollars
in spending.
the dollars in
correct?
spending, and because of assessment. Those are the two things that are causing the increase, right? So if you take away one of the variables, you will know what is the cost of one, right? So for example, in East Wawanosh, you could say your taxes are going up whatever because your assessment is gone up 10%, and that equates to this amount of money of your overall increase. And this is the cost of your increase because of the taxation burden, because of the increase in spending. That's the only way to communicate it so that, but nobody in the right mind is going to tell that to the media, because you'd have a column about 85, they're not going to understand it. But that's the two variables that cause taxation to be different in each of the wards, is the assessment is one part, and then the tax rates are the other part.
The tax spending.
The tax spending. So the tax spending is one, but the assessment's the other. If you locked the assessment, you would know what the rates are. Like, you could change the assessment on all those properties and leave them alone. Don't increase the assessment, and that would be your tax increase just overall based on spending.
So I think that's a little more in depth than what I think I'm looking for, and maybe Chris. I'm just gonna try this one more time. We're gonna decide tonight, except for the Wing and Ward because of the police, we're gonna decide we're happy with Blythe and we're happy with East Wawanosh. Every year, when you do your budget, it comes out in the Blythe paper and the Wingham paper and the gossip columns. Taxes went up in North Huron 5%. So it's going to be in the paper reading that. And Trevor's right, nobody cares how you got there. Nobody's going to listen to anything you have to tell them. All they know is the paper said it is 5%. So if we decide tonight that we're happy with East Wawanosh and Blythe, what is the paper going to say? Forget all the other stuff about how we got there, why we got there. Chris just wants to know when he reads that paper, how people are going to call him and say, my God, it went up 10%, or my God, it went up 2%. So if we could just, and if it's going to be on 3 different levels, I understand that. But are you prepared tonight to say, if we did finish this Blythe, and not because in the Blythe paper they don't say a house of $300,000 is $500. They don't do that. They just say 5%. So how did they get there? Because that's the one that all of us at this table are going to get hit with, especially after last year. So that's just run. I'm just trying to simplify it down to that.
Okay, and so what I explained to the paper and what they have been reporting is a house assessed at $202,750. The increases would be as listed there.
Which are 5.9, 7, and 7.99.
And the dollars that go with those.
So they're going to report that it's less than 1% for East Wawanosh.
Mm-hmm.
So I can go back where I started from.
But
So
as
isn't
soon
that
as,
what you want? You pulled off a less than 1% tax increase?
That means nothing,
No.
that's the farmland, that's
that's
the
on a
brute.
residential.
It's
Yeah.
the brute.
And
And
we can't do
it's,
anything about it, but the farmland is just for East Wawanosh, really killing.
yeah,
But you guys pulled
We
off a
can't do
1%, a less than 1%. Blythe and East Wawanosh pulled
On
off less than
residential.
1%.
Yeah.
On the residential.
and that's great. Except for $202,000 house that's nowhere, that's not the value at all. Value's a lot higher, like everybody starts higher than that in East Wawanosh.
Well, I pulled a report today.
That's not much. That doesn't
It
buy
is,
much.
it isn't, but the report today says that the average residential property in North Huron is at 176. And so I didn't follow that report. I went to a property that I kind of follow all along. And so it was over 200,000. So
Sure.
that's the one that I used there.
So going back to Donna's original question then, are we comfortable to sit on that, or do you want to look the budget over more on East Wawanosh and Blythe and see if you can reduce that even more? Go ahead, Bruce.
Okay, that 1 or 1.5% increase for the residential, that sounds good, that's easy to sell. But it's the farmland portion, it's the whole, all they know is we pay $8,000 tax. And by gosh, it went up to $9,000. That's what they see.
Yeah.
And every farm's different and they all know it because of values, assessments. So that's what I'd okay, so if we followed one, give me an example
Well,
of what it actually is going to be.
you have one,
Like, is it going to be go up
Right there.
11%?
That's an actual property in East Wawanosh. Last year, the house on this property was assessed at 165.1. It's now assessed at 172.3. And then the farm, you see the farm piece, the actual assessments, this is an actual property.
So do you add it up and say the value has gone up 15%? It's
His assessment is went up 15%.
The assessment went up.
assessment.
His assessment went up 15%. Which we have
Well,
no impact.
You
Right.
can't even
Well,
say
His
that.
assessment on his house went up
Yes.
4, his assessment on his land went up 10.
Yes, that's how
And
you
we
have it.
can't affect that.
So $103 and $706 of the dollars. So that's including the mill, right? Yeah. So what rate is that? What's the increase then? Well,
We can't do anything about it.
no, but the mill rates are going across here. Those are the mill rates, right? Mill
Tax
rates?
rate, the tax rates are calculated, so all your tax rates are calculated, the residential is the basis of 1. And then like commercial is 1.1, farmland is 0.25
Mhm.
of the residential rate. So they all start out at 1, which is residential, and then the tax ratios, which Trevor was talking about, is it takes them and breaks them down into what those rates are different. And farmland is 25% of the residential
Mhm.
tax rate.
So Chris, and just, Donna, correct me if I'm wrong, so Chris, so here's what you're up against. We can't change any of that. That's done over our heads. The only thing we can change is if we want to reduce the taxes, is not fix the roads. Not fix the buildings. Don't buy new trucks. Lay people off. See, we're in between a rock and a hard place here, and every municipality is. So so when you go out to your community, even though it went up, it's still, we have to plow the roads. I mean, we have to take something like that away to bring that down even more, irregardless if you own 10,000 acres or 100 acres. Irregardless of what your mill rate is, this council can only do something about it by taking away something. So you've got, when we were getting elected, you heard they wanted the roads fixed up. We have to pay for that. And that's all part of what we're doing here tonight. The mill rate and impact and that is the only thing we can do there is send them letters, call them. But for our budget purposes, you and I both know they're not listening. We know that.
Yeah, I know.
It couldn't get, there's an apartment building in Toronto has more people in it than we have, and they get their taxes. They don't care about us. Oh, it's on camera. I'm in trouble again.
Paul has a question.
Go ahead, Paul.
In all fairness, I think we have to realize the reason why the farms have gone up is that every auction sale, people don't want to stop nodding their heads. And it's caught up to them, and it just keeps going up, eh? And it's their own, I'm not saying their own fault, I'm in there too. That has a bearing on it, and that's what impact's going with,
I know.
you know?
Anita?
I understand that impact's going with there, but for the people who wanna continue farming, that is really hard.
Oh,
It's
oh,
nice for
definitely,
people who wanna sell their farm, but for
I
anybody
know,
else,
I know,
it's just.
that's the problem, I know,
Yeah.
but
You're not paying any more than I am.
What?
Yeah, for the house, you're not paying any more, that's right.
No, but I meant for a house in Blythe, my house in Blythe, I pay I pay pretty close to what the farmland is paying.
For a little piece of land.
For one lot in the house, where the
Yeah,
taxpayer.
but farmers are paying residential as well. We are paying for the house too, the same rate as you do for your house. And farmland doesn't get anything, eh? They don't have any, the cows don't go to the rec center or anything like that. So you have to take that in consideration too.
So,
There's no
I'd rather have
service for
100
that.
acres stuck on the side of my house for the same price.
But I guess the question is, for a staff point of view, we've looked at the projects in the budget, we've looked at the costs of how we operate business here in the municipality. And we're asking at this point, other than the police aside, are we at a point that we are, even though we don't like the numbers, that we are in a position to, as soon as we have the police number, that we're ready to pass the budget? Or are there further projects that you want us to cut out of this budget? And further things that you don't want in this budget in order to be able to pass it? So I guess, and that's not even so much about, it is about dollars, but for projects and things that you wanted to see accomplished, for 2019, we do have a full plate, but are we getting some things done to move North Huron forward this year? And we have this list of capital, and as I said, some of it we really don't have any leeway on. We have to go through with some of this, such as the fire hall and things like that. So I'm asking council's direction then, is there further reductions in this budget that you would like staff to go back and cut out of this budget?
So I'm gonna go around the clock again, we'll start with Anita. So the question's going to be, are you okay with the budget excluding the police? Or do you want time to come back, look the budget over and say, this and this and this I'd like to look at?
No, I'm okay with the budget. I have some things that I would want to look at over the coming year, like what's going into reserves. There's some things that I think like, why is that? But no, I'm okay with this budget.
Yeah, and we'll bring those forward, we'll show you how to bring those forward as the year
Okay.
goes by, so we can talk to
Yep.
them. Yep,
Yep.
we're good with that. I know it's hard, Chris, and it does not get any easier as the years roll in. Thoughts, my friend?
Wow. Like I said, you should be commended for the hard work everybody's done. And we need to move forward. Any of the capital items have to be done. Like, I think it was wonderful the list you've come up with. So it's going to be a swallow, a big pill. And we have to, I liked it better in your first days when it was always 2-3%. But we've got to get back there somehow. Looking forward to next year when the police issue will be taken care of, and hopefully that helps. But and new development, so that makes us really push hard for new development.
Yes, that is the only way out of my mind.
Yeah, so go for it.
Thank you. Rick?
Yeah, I'm happy with it.
Okay, thanks a lot. Trevor?
I don't think there's anything that we can cut, other than services. You're not cutting anything else. You're cutting services if you're gonna cut anything. And I know ratepayers are not willing to do that at this point. They've been, in the last 4.5 years of my municipal career, they have been unwilling to provide me of any solid discussion about what service they don't want. When I bring it up, they're pretty much very vocal about not getting rid of it. But then they have a concern about taxation. So I think we've done what, even as bad as this sounds, a 5.5% increase in Wingham because of the one-time costs that we're having to deal with isn't terrible. It's not great. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's not awesome. But if you had to deal with a cost because of a one-time deal, that we hope to accomplish from last year, and there was obviously some hiccups coming into this year. 5.5%, if we knew that next year is not going to be 5.5%, and it's going to be probably closer to 0.99 or 1, I think it's an easier pill to swallow. But we don't know that. And the conversation is that I think, that's going to be we're going to live and die, and right or wrong, I'm going to live and die on the Wingham Police discussion. So I'm accepting of that. But I think the budget is okay with the way it is. The Police Services Board is going to work hard to make sure we've got accurate numbers, that's not going to go up anymore. I think we've been very clear with Donna and that there is some things that we've put in there to make sure that we're being conservative. So I think I'm happy with the way it is, and we got to move forward from there.
Kevin?
I'd just like to commend you on almost a Herculean effort on this second draft that I was not anticipating as favorable numbers that we've come here with this. What's in is standard things that have to be in there, and really we're, other than the police services, we're really just dealing in this budget with inflation. Here, I mean, the cost of everything has gone up at least that much on everything. So I must commend you, and I'm quite comfortable, or quite surprised and quite happy with these numbers.
Thank you. Paul?
All you outside people here, Don, I can't believe this. I thought it was going to be after our last time you left out here. I thought what we were going to have to tell the people. I can't believe it. Like, it's great. I pass it. And Trevor's going to look after the police people there, and this is better. I can't believe it. Thank you very much, Don.
Oh, good, no problem. I have lots of help from the team for
Yes.
sure. So
I guess just before you speak, Don, I want to say myself that, we sat together and battled over budgets before and battled. This has been a walk in the park, guys. The staff did a fantastic job. I just can't commend you enough. Because Donna, I'll tell you, we've had some pretty big battles through the year to get it down to 4%. So I do appreciate all the work you've done. Donna, especially you. I know this is always the hardest part of your year, and I'll hand it back over to you for a minute.
okay, well, thank you very much. And I think, I'd like to say that for most of you being new, you have done a tremendous job. Like, you had to have been on information overload. And as I said, I wouldn't mind taking a couple minutes right now, if I could, though, to ask you how we could make it easier for you, or what processes could we have done differently. I know it took us a long time to get through the first draft, but we wanted to do that. And in the past, what staff have done is we've come up with a budget, and then amongst ourselves, we've said, oh, we can't give them a 30% budget. So then we've done a lot of the cutting ourselves. But in doing that, it doesn't let you know or give you the heads up. If you, like, say, for example, the Parks Master Plan, it's been in here for 10 years and it's been cut out every time. It doesn't mean it isn't important, and it's certainly something that we've always wanted to do. It was just an easy cut, just, to keep going. And unfortunately, too, a lot of the easy cuts have been capital, and we don't want that because we're suffering with the number of buildings that we have and all the age of them, that we really need to be putting money into reserves. And as I said, I know myself, like, I take every opportunity to squirrel away whatever money we can into reserves. Like, it's so important to get money in there so that when things happen, and they do, and they're going to, then you have a little bit of money to be able to call upon and not have to raise the taxes. So we made a few changes to the budget layout this year, but not that many in light of you folks being new. So it is an Excel-based document. It is small print, and I certainly understand that. But if you can, I welcome any feedback that you can give me on what would have made it easier for you and things like that. So I don't know if anybody has any comments you can throw out. Kevin, I took your suggestions on this draft and I put the surplus deficit at the number at the bottom to make it easier for you to, at a glance, see those numbers. That's an easy thing to do. And if it helps you, then I'm happy to do that. As I said, next year when we start, I won't have the extra year. I just did that this year because you were new and I wanted to give you some extra data, but it makes the print small. So anyway, I don't know if you want to throw it out to for just a couple of minutes before we move on, if you have any feedback that you can give me, or send me a note even after, and just tell me if there was something as part of the process that we could do differently in preparation for next year. Also, as we talked about, is I really would like to carry on with the idea that we meet again in September for a real good go at year to date and where we are. And what we've done before is it's been a half-day meeting, and all the department heads come, and usually at that meeting, not usually, the department heads give you a real good summary of what's happened to them at that point. Parks are closed, cemeteries are closed. They've had the first bash of winter, so all the capital construction projects are well underway. So it's a really good opportunity to give you a really good update as to where we're going to end up at the end of the year. So I'm hoping that we can still move forward with that as a suggestion. So I just wanted to go back to my notes here for a minute. If I can get them to come back up again, and now I'm getting errors on my computer. So we would, as I said, we would like to move forward. Then for now, we'll wait for the police board to come back to us with their final numbers, and then we still need to advertise. And the night that we pass the budget, what happens there is that I do a PowerPoint presentation at the beginning of the meeting and summarize for the public the highlights. We talk about the capital and some of the things we've gone through to get to the budget, get the budget to the passing point. And so that's about usually 20 minutes to a half an hour at the start of the meeting in which we do pass the budget. So one of the next steps then is, so the audit starts on Monday, and so we will by Saturday have all the final numbers for 2018. So we'll put those numbers into our final draft of the budget. We talked about amongst ourselves whether we would try to get the capital budget passed tonight, but I think maybe Trevor, if you're looking at 2 weeks, maybe.
So I'm thinking that we could be very easily be able to come back and have a budget back to you for everything to be fully reviewed and done by March the 18th council meeting. Like that's not out of the question.
Okay.
Because I'm like I said, I'm expecting to have a meeting next week on Monday, and then I'm gonna set up another meeting probably for the week after. If not the week after, if not the week after that, then obviously the week after that, depending on what the board's availability is. But I think they're available. I've communicated to them that we need to be available. And then I could have you numbers no later than March the 8th. So the 8th is a Friday. You would have 10 days to do the up to date. And again, I'm not suggesting it's going to be earth-shattering differences. It's really we're concerned about salaries, making sure the salaries are right, and making sure our cost for the dispatching parts is correct. That's all we're really concerned about, and to make sure that the assets are dealt with in a proper way. That's it, and that's what we just want to make sure we're right and conservative. And the fact that the final pays are being done, in conjunction with that, we should have a pretty good number of what those numbers are, because they'll be actual. We technically will be actual by the time we get it done.
That's right.
So,
So from a staff, any of the staff that are present, are there any projects that are being held up then by not moving forward with the capital portion? Sean, are you?
So through you, as far as capital goes, we've already got pre-budget approval on the big one. It's gone to Dean Ross. The fire hall / public works is now progressing, so I think operationally, I'm quite content.
Marty?
I'm fine.
Valerie?
Our projects are, yeah, you have to determine them moving forward with the funds that we have now.
Vicky?
You're fine, okay.
Okay, so I think from a staffing point of view, then the timing will work out for us that we can, as soon as we get those numbers in. So we will aim to have the budget passed in March then. And perhaps Bernie, you'll know a little bit more after you go to the county budget meeting.
We're there again tomorrow. I'm there again tomorrow.
So one other thing is, as staff, we owe you some reports on some things. So we will shift gears as through the budget process. There was a number of questions came up on certain things. There was a couple of agreements you wanted to have a look at. So we've pulled some of those. Trevor, you had wanted that staffing project, so we will tackle that. So anyway, we want to go back and we do have a list of questions and things that council had asked for. So as we can gather you that information, we will bring that forward to you.
Just remind me what it means by the staffing report that I asked?
I was gonna say, could you send a report out to all of us and email it to all of us, exactly the list, because I'm with you. I want to know what the list
The
is.
staffing report, as you asked, is to go back 5 years and compare the number of positions that we had from 5 years ago till now, the number of full-time staff that we,
Yeah,
by position.
I'm not sure. The
That was
only reason I said that was to give the council an idea and even ourselves a better idea of whether it's full complement of employees or if it's increase in wages or whatever the case may be, or is it grid changes or whatever. I'm not suggesting that if that's something, if people are happy with the budget, I'm only concerned is that that's information that if we get questioned about salaries or something to that effect, that we have some documentation. But unless somebody asks for it, if the council doesn't need it, I have a pretty good idea over the last 4.5 years of where we're at, and I don't think it's full-time equivalent headcount. It's gone skyrocketing. I know where it's coming from. So, for my request, it was an overall general thought of council. If the rest of council doesn't necessarily need it at this point, it can be part of the next year's budget preparation. Sorry, that's why I just wanted to clarify that. If that's what you were.
Yes, that's a project that I was speaking of.
So Don, I want to go back, and then you said there was a list of things that we'd asked you about. I would like you to send it out in an email to the councilors, because there's a couple of, I actually have them on a list for tonight to talk about, but I'm not going to, because you're going to put a list together and I'll see if it's on the list. And I would like to, through the next month or two, talk about a few of these things. And I presume you just picked that up through conversations through different meetings.
These were just through budget meetings only.
Okay, that's good.
Just through budget meetings only. So say, for example, like that was one. Another one was, say, for example, that you wanted to take a look at the Braemar agreement. So we've pulled that agreement for you. So those are like two examples in particular that you had said at the last meeting. So those were a couple of things. So I have the copy on my desk of that agreement type of thing. So.
Yeah. And I remember it because we went through it when I was on council, made some changes. Okay, yeah, there's just a few things. So if anybody has something they want to talk about, we'll get it on that list. And it's not something that has to be done right away, but things that you're curious about, that would be a good starting place for the council to start coming together with the staff to say these are our concerns and where we want to go, knowing that it does not have to be done right away.
And it was just related to what came out of budget.
Yep.
This particular. Okay, so does anyone have any other questions or concerns with the budget then? And anything else that we want to get cleared up then before we?
Donna, when you said, I'll start. Donna, when you said about
Yep.
changing these around, I would like to see actuals stay on for at least 2 years back.
Okay.
I do not need the original budget. It's the actuals so that we can float along and make sure there's not a hiccup in there, and then that makes it easier. I do not want to do away with what we've done in the last years.
Okay, thank you. That's no problem.
Anyone else? Chris?
Through you, Eve. Hate to harbor on this, but the donation request, you said that, and the hospital won a 50,000. How many more years? One more?
19 and 20.
This year and next year.
Wow. Okay. You know, I saw it was in the paper. Here in East, I guess, and they had a maximum of $20,000, and they had a list as long as the page, and it was just $300 here, $300. It was great. They were helping so many groups in a little way, and I was in awe of it. And I thought, now look at ours. We've got 6 items, and so okay, you wait.
Anybody at any time can come forward and do a presentation to council to be added onto that. Just going back again to when I was on council, there was a bit longer list, and we just gave the money out every year. And I was the one that said, well, I think those organizations should at least make an appearance once a year and ask for the money. And so I'm not sure if that continued on, but we did have that. And that could have been why we have such a drop, or had a drop in the amount of people that come. But I felt that if you're using taxpayers' dollars, you should at least come before council and explain what you're doing and why you're doing. I think it's a great thing when they do that. So anybody can come before council and ask for it. And if we couldn't get it on this year's budget because the budget's done, usually we remember to put it on for the following year.
We have to be careful, like it's 50, for 50,000, we have to have a limit. Just an interest. Does the hospital say thank you?
So as the guy that stood in front of this council and asked for that money, I said thank you, and I say thank you, and I do appreciate it. And I went to all the townships and all the counties, and even Bruce County gave me $100,000. Everybody realizes that if we as small communities don't pull together to keep our hospitals, our schools, our high schools, our parks, and everything that goes with it, we're just not going to have it. So when I did that, I'll tell you how overwhelmed I was and grateful. They asked me to raise $250,000. I raised $1 million by simply going to the other councils that I had met. They all understood how important it was to keep this facility around. So yes, it's we definitely do, absolutely. And Carl will come once or twice, I think once a year, before council and tell you the progress of the hospital, what's going on, what they did with the money, and the.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's what I need to know.
Yeah. No, we absolutely appreciated everybody's help on that. Anything else?
Nothing. Sorry, Heather.
The only thing I would have is that, and it has nothing to do with what you as staff did, but I think what made the issue more cloudy is the change in which things were accounted for. So because of the change in the restructuring. So you got stuff that was done in rec before, now it's being budgeted in public works. Now you've got things in this way and we're that way. If I have a feeling that if and let me be clear, that happened in 2018 as well. So it's been a constant moving and shaking of where things are going to be put in the budget. I think if to make it so simplified for this council and the council probably going forward is, unless there's an absolute necessity to move something because of whatever reason, I think it needs to stay where it is for consistency purposes so that we don't get into next year going, why is wages up this high and next year it's over down here? And I think that added more confusion and more time to the budget that it really necessarily needed, only for clarity. And I completely agree with all the questions that were asked, but it's that part of it, I think, that added probably a few hours to the conversation that probably didn't need to be if we would have just been consistent from year to year. And it's no fault to the staff and no fault to the previous council. It's just what it was. But I think consistency to me will help help the process immensely.
Couldn't agree with you more. No more change.
Todd?
Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none. The next meeting is going to be determined, I presume.
Okay, March 19th.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if Donna wanted to record that or wait till she heard from you, but that's okay. So confirmatory bylaw. The bylaw number 21, 2019 being a bylaw to confirm the February 20th, 2019 actions of the Council of the Township of North Huron be introduced, read a first, second, third, and a final time. Signed by the Reeve and the clerk and endorsed in the bylaw book. Do I have a mover? Kevin and Paul seconds. All in favor? Thank you. Adjournment. That there be no further, go ahead. Oh, yeah.
Hey, questions?
Adjourn.
Adjourned, yeah. Seconder.
I'm making sure I'm first.
Rick. All in favor? Unanimous.
Well, thank you again, everyone. It was a good meeting, and I really appreciate all your work in working through this first budget. It won't be, I'm not saying the numbers get any easier, but hopefully the process gets easier next round.